The earth shakes at 10:28 on the morning of December 6th, 1907. A roar erupts from beneath the hills of Monongah, West Virginia, so violent it rattles windows 5 miles away in Fairmont. Black smoke and debris blast from the twin entrances of mines number 6 and number 8, followed by tongues of flame that lick the frozen winter air. The steel tipple bridge connecting the two mine heads buckles and collapses. Mine cars fly through the air like children's toys. The ground itself heaves upward, then settles. Then silence. Inside the mountain, 362 men stop breathing. Most die instantly, crushed by the concussive force or incinerated by the fireball that races through 8 miles of underground passages. Others survive the initial blast only to suffocate in the darkness as poisonous afterdamp, a lethal mixture of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, floods the shattered ventilation system. The Monongah disaster stands as the worst mining catastrophe in American history. It claims 362 officially recorded lives, though the true number is likely higher. Among the dead are 171 Italian immigrants who came to West Virginia seeking the promise of industrial America. There are Poles and Russians, Greeks and Hungarians. There are fathers and sons working side by side. There are boys as young as 12, counted as men by the Fairmont Coal Company because they carry a lunch pail underground. The explosion leaves 250 women widowed and creates 1,000 fatherless children in a single morning. It is a disaster born not of accident, but of calculated neglect, a catastrophe that industry leaders and mine operators see coming and choose to ignore. But to understand how 362 men come to die beneath a West Virginia mountain, you must understand the economics that drive them underground. The early 20th century runs on coal. Every factory, every railroad locomotive, every steamship burns it. Cities heat their homes with it. Steel mills devour mountains of it. American industry in 1907 consumes more than 450 million tons of coal annually, and the demand climbs higher every year. West Virginia sits atop some of the richest coal seams in North America, and companies race to extract it. The Fairmont Coal Company operates multiple mines in Marion County, employing thousands of workers. The company pays dividends to shareholders while immigrant laborers earn $2.50 for a 10-hour shift in conditions that would horrify modern observers. These men do not mine coal for the love of darkness. They descend because they have families to feed and debts to pay. Many are recent arrivals who speak little English, recruited directly from Ellis Island with promises of steady work. The coal companies prefer immigrants. They work harder for less money, they organize unions less frequently, and they file fewer complaints about safety violations. The system works beautifully for the owners. In 1907 alone, American coal mines kill 3,242 workers. That is nearly 9 deaths every single day. The industry treats this mortality rate as an acceptable cost of doing business. The Fairmont Coal Company posts record profits while paying minimal attention to the dangers accumulating beneath Monongah. If you're enjoying this documentary and want to see more investigations into industrial disasters that changed history, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We're building a comprehensive archive of these forgotten tragedies. The Monongah operation consists of 2 parallel mines, number 6 and number 8, connected by a steel bridge on the surface and by underground passages below. Together they penetrate deep into the hillside, with tunnels extending more than 2 miles from the entrance. The mines produce high-quality bituminous coal, the type most valued for industrial use. But these mines also generate enormous quantities of methane gas, a colorless, Odorless killer that seeps continuously from the coal seams. Miners call it fire damp, and they know it explodes when mixed with air and ignited. The mine also produces coal dust, fine particles that hang suspended in the air and coat every surface. This dust is even more dangerous than methane. When kicked up by a blast of air or a sudden movement, coal dust becomes an explosive suspension, a fuel-air mixture waiting for a spark. A small methane explosion can ignite coal dust, which then propagates the explosion through miles of tunnels in seconds, creating a chain reaction of devastating power. Mining engineers understand these dangers. The technology exists to prevent explosions. Proper ventilation systems can dilute methane to safe levels. Water spraying can suppress coal dust. Electrical equipment can be properly insulated. Knee safety lamps can replace open flames. But all these precautions cost money, and the Fairmont Coal Company operates on a different principle: extract maximum coal at minimum expense. The mine uses open-flame carbide lamps that miners wear on their caps. These lamps burn acetylene gas produced by dripping water onto calcium carbide chips, creating a small but exposed flame. The flame provides light. It also ignites any methane or coal dust it encounters. The mine's electrical system consists of poorly insulated wires strung through dusty passages. Sparks arc regularly from worn connections. The ventilation system operates inadequately, moving too little fresh air through too many miles of tunnel. The danger lurks invisibly in the Monongah tunnels. Methane accumulates in roof pockets and dead-end passages where ventilation fails to reach. Coal dust coats the walls, the timbers, the miners' clothing. Every day, the workers breathe this mixture of explosive gases and combustible particles. Every day they carry open flames into this environment. Every day they roll steel mine cars along tracks that can produce sparks when wheels bind against rails. The mine fire bosses, the safety inspectors employed by the company, conduct cursory examinations and file reports stating that conditions meet minimum legal standards. These reports are lies, but convenient ones. State mine inspectors visit occasionally, but lack the authority or the will to shut down profitable operations. The Fairmont Coal Company knows its mines are dangerous. Company executives receive complaints from workers about methane accumulations and inadequate ventilation. They ignore these complaints. The company could install better ventilation systems, eliminate open flames, implement dust suppression, and improve electrical safety. These improvements would cost approximately $50,000, less than 1 month's profit from the Monongah operations. The company declines to spend it. In the calculus of industrial capitalism, $50,000 spent on safety measures that might prevent a disaster produces no immediate return on investment. The shareholders never see that money. But if a disaster occurs, the company faces only limited liability. The courts consistently rule that miners assume the risks of their occupation when they accept employment. The Fairmont Coal Company therefore chooses to accept the risk of catastrophe rather than reduce its profit margin. This choice kills 362 men. What disasters do you think had the biggest impact on workplace safety regulations? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. The Monongah explosion is not unprecedented. It is merely the largest in a pattern of disasters that stretches back decades. Just 4 days earlier, on December 2nd, the Naomi mine in Fayette County, Pennsylvania, explodes and kills 34 workers. That disaster receives local newspaper coverage and is then forgotten. On December 19th, just 13 days after Monongah, the Dar mine in Jacobs Creek, Pennsylvania, explodes and kills 239 men and boys. That makes 3 major coal mine explosions in 17 days, claiming a combined total of 635 lives. The month of December, 1907 becomes known as Bloody December in coal country. In that single month, 703 American coal miners die in explosions. The pattern extends beyond December. In 1906, American coal mines killed 2,388 workers. In 1907, the death toll rises to 3,242. In 1908, another 2,492 die. The coal industry produces corpses at an industrial scale. Most of these deaths occur not in dramatic explosions but in individual accidents: roof collapses, runaway mine cars, asphyxiation, electrocution. These deaths happen one at a time and receive no national attention. They are the cost of doing business, acknowledged in insurance actuarial tables and company ledgers, but not in congressional hearings. The explosions are different. Explosions kill dozens or hundreds at once and generate headlines. Explosions create orphans in numbers too large to ignore. Explosions briefly focus public attention on conditions that miners and their families understand intimately, but that the broader public prefers not to consider. After each explosion, there are calls for reform. Mine operators promise improvements. State legislators hold hearings. Then the news cycle moves on, the mines reopen, and nothing fundamental changes. The same conditions that caused the previous explosion remain in place, waiting to kill again. The community of Monongah exists because of the mines. The Fairmont Coal Company builds the town to house its workers. The company owns the houses the miners rent. The company operates the store where miners buy their food and supplies, often on credit extended against future wages. This system, called scrip, keeps workers in perpetual debt to their employer. A miner receives his wages not in U.S. currency but in company scrip, good only at the company store. The store charges inflated prices. The worker falls into debt. The debt chains him to the company. If he tries to leave, the company demands payment. If he complains about safety conditions, the company threatens eviction. The immigrant workers face additional pressures. Many send money home to families in Italy or Poland or Russia. Many are saving to bring wives and children to America. They cannot afford to lose their jobs. They cannot afford to be labeled troublemakers. So they descend into dangerous mines and trust that luck will protect them for one more shift. The women and children of Monongah understand that every shift carries risk. They know the men might not return, but they also know they have no alternative. There are no other jobs in Monongah. The coal company is the only employer. To refuse work in the mines is to face destitution. The entire community lives under the mountain's shadow, economically and literally. Everyone depends on the coal that the men extract. Everyone knows about the methane and the coal dust and the inadequate ventilation. Everyone has heard about explosions at other mines. But what can they do? They are trapped by poverty and geography and the economic structure of industrial America. They can only hope that disaster strikes some other mine, some other community. This time, the disaster comes to them. On the morning of December 6, 1907, approximately 380 men descend into mines number 6 and number 8. The exact number is uncertain because the company keeps poor records of immigrant workers. Many are not officially on the payroll. Some work under assumed names. The company does not want to know exactly how many men are underground. Official records mean official responsibility. The morning shift begins as it always does. The miners gather at the mine entrance in the pre-dawn darkness, their carbide lamps casting flickering shadows. They check in with the fire boss, receive their assignments, and disappear into the earth. The mine cars rattle along the tracks, carrying men deeper into the mountain. At the working face, miners attack the coal seam with picks and sledgehammers. Some operate mechanical undercutters that slice beneath the coal to prepare it for blasting. Others drill holes for explosives. The air is thick with coal dust. The temperature is cold near the entrance, but grows warmer in the deep workings. Ventilation is poor in some sections. Men work in air that has already passed through other workings, depleted of oxygen and heavy with methane. At approximately 10:28 a.m., something ignites the explosive mixture. The exact cause is never determined with certainty, but investigators speculate that a spark from electrical equipment or an open flame from a carbide lamp encounters a pocket of methane. The methane explodes. That initial explosion, perhaps no larger than the contents of a room, kicks coal dust into suspension. The dust ignites. The explosion propagates. Within seconds, a massive fireball races through 8 miles of underground passages at thousands of feet per second. The explosion travels down main haulage ways and up air shafts, through cross-cuts and room entries. It reaches every section of both mines almost simultaneously. The force is tremendous. Wooden support timbers shatter. Rail tracks twist into grotesque shapes. Mine cars are blown hundreds of feet through tunnels. The explosion vents through both mine entrances with such force that it launches debris 200 feet into the air. The steel tipple bridge connecting the two mines collapses. Buildings near the mine entrance are damaged. Men working on the surface are knocked down by the blast wave. The destruction does not end with the initial explosion. The blast destroys the ventilation system, collapsing air shafts and damaging ventilation fans. Without airflow, poisonous gases flood the mine. Afterdamp, the deadly mixture of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen that remains after an explosion, fills the passages. Carbon monoxide is particularly insidious. It is colorless, odorless, and binds to hemoglobin more effectively than oxygen, causing asphyxiation without warning. Men who survive the initial blast find themselves trapped in darkness, their lamps extinguished, breathing poison. Some make desperate attempts to reach the surface, crawling through debris-choked passages. A few succeed, most do not. The explosion also ignites fires in several sections of the mine. Coal seams catch fire and burn. Timber supports smolder. The fires consume oxygen and produce more carbon monoxide, compounding the poisoning effect of the afterdamp. Within the deep sections of the mine, more than 2 miles from the entrance, the situation is hopeless. The explosion has blocked passages with fallen rock and shattered timbers. The air is unbreathable. The darkness is absolute. Men trapped in these sections have perhaps 15 minutes of consciousness before the carbon monoxide renders them unconscious. Death follows shortly after. Near the mine entrance, the situation is marginally better. The explosion is less powerful there, and some passages remain partially open. 4 Italian miners, their names later recorded as Peter Urban, Daniel Lascadi, Fred Novak, and an unnamed 4th man, managed to escape to the surface in the minutes following the blast. They are injured and disoriented but alive. One man, a Polish miner named Jacob Wojtko, survives deep in the mine by finding a pocket of breathable air trapped behind fallen rock. He waits in darkness for rescuers. The final count staggers the nation. The Fairmont Coal Company officially reports 362 deaths, though the true number is almost certainly higher. Many immigrant workers, particularly Italians, never appear on company rosters. Families report missing husbands and sons who have no death certificates because the company has no record of their employment. Modern historians estimate the actual death toll may exceed 500. Of the official count, 171 are Italian immigrants. Another 94 are Slavic workers, Poles, Russians, Ukrainians, Czechs, Slovaks. There are Greeks and Hungarians. There are native-born Americans. There are fathers who die alongside their sons. There are brothers who go into the mine together and never emerge. The dead include boys as young as 12, though the company records list them as older to avoid child labor law violations. The recovery effort takes weeks. Rescuers bring out bodies when they can. But many remain entombed in collapsed sections that are too dangerous to enter. Some sections are sealed permanently, becoming underground tombs. Bodies that are recovered are often unrecognizable, identified by belongings or by family members who recognize a piece of clothing or a tool. The town of Monongah transforms into a landscape of grief. Every house loses someone. Women wail in the streets. Children search for fathers who will never return. The company pays for a mass funeral, burying many victims in a common grave, because individual burials would cost too much and because many bodies cannot be identified. The disaster creates 250 widows and more than 1,000 fatherless children overnight. The widows receive no company pension, no workers' compensation, no continued income. Many are evicted from company housing within weeks to make room for new workers. The children go hungry. Some are sent to orphanages. Others are taken in by relatives who can barely feed their own families. The immigrant families face additional hardships. Many women speak no English. They have no family in America. They have no means of supporting themselves. Some return to Italy or Poland, carrying the ashes of their husbands in small boxes. Others remain, taking in laundry or working as domestic servants, earning pennies to feed their children. The official investigation into the Monongah disaster is a masterpiece of evasion and buck-passing. The West Virginia State Mine Inspector visits the site and concludes that the disaster resulted from an explosion of gas and coal dust to cause unknown. This finding is technically true and completely useless. It identifies what happened without addressing why it happened or who bears responsibility. The Fairmont Coal Company expresses deep sympathy for the victims and their families while steadfastly denying any culpability. Company officials testify that the mines met all applicable safety standards, that ventilation was adequate, that fire bosses conducted regular safety inspections, and that the company maintained proper equipment. These statements are contradicted by survivor testimony and physical evidence, but the company has better lawyers and more political influence than dead miners' widows. The federal government conducts its own investigation through the United States Geological Survey. The Bureau of Mines does not yet exist. The investigation produces a detailed technical report analyzing the explosion's progression and the inadequacy of ventilation systems. The report notes that proper safety measures could have prevented the disaster. The report makes recommendations for improved ventilation, elimination of open flames, and better coal dust management. The report has no force of law. No one is prosecuted. No one goes to prison. No one even loses their job. The Fairmont Coal Company pays no fine and admits no wrongdoing. The company does establish a small relief fund for widows and orphans, contributing approximately $30,000, less than 1 week's profit from the Monongah operations. Public subscription drives raise an additional $50,000. This money is distributed to families, providing each widow with perhaps $200 to $300, enough to survive for a few months. Then the charity ends. The mines reopen in January 1908. The company recruits new workers to replace the dead. Production resumes. The question that haunts Monongah is not, how did this happen, but why did it keep happening? The answer lies in the economics of industrial capitalism and the political impotence of labor. Coal mine explosions continue because preventing them reduces profit margins, and preventing them is not required by law. The Fairmont Coal Company and hundreds of companies like it conduct a cost-benefit analysis. On one side of the ledger, the cost of comprehensive safety measures, better ventilation, elimination of open flames, electrical safety improvements, dust suppression systems. These measures might cost $100,000 per mine, a significant capital investment that produces no increase in coal production. On the other side of the ledger, the cost of occasional disasters, funeral expenses, modest relief payments to families, brief work stoppages, potential lawsuits. These costs, even when disasters occur, amount to less than the cost of comprehensive safety measures. The companies run the numbers and choose to accept the risk of catastrophe. This choice is rational from a strictly economic perspective. It is also monstrous. The companies can make this choice because workers have no power to demand better. There are no effective mine safety laws. There are no strong unions in West Virginia in 1907. There is no workers' compensation system. There is no legal requirement for companies to maintain safe working conditions. The doctrine of assumption of risk dominates labor law. Courts rule that workers who accept dangerous jobs implicitly agree to accept the consequences. Families of men killed in mine disasters have virtually no legal recourse. The system protects capital and treats labor as expendable. The immigrant workers who die at Monongah are, in the eyes of the industry, infinitely replaceable. When they die, the company simply recruits more immigrants from Ellis Island. There is always another Italian or Pole or Hungarian willing to work for $2.50 a day. The system functions with brutal efficiency until the disasters become so frequent and so deadly that they can no longer be ignored. What would you do if you were a miner's family member during this era? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Monongah changes America, though not immediately and not as much as it should. The disaster generates nationwide outrage. Newspapers across the country run front-page stories about the 362 dead miners and the 1,000 fatherless children. Editorial writers denounce the coal company's negligence. Labor activists cite Monongah as evidence that capitalism without regulation produces needless death. Religious leaders preach sermons about the moral responsibility of industrialists. The public pressure builds. Congress responds, though not forcefully. In 1910, 3 years after Monongah, Congress creates the United States Bureau of Mines as part of the Department of the Interior. The Bureau's mission is to conduct research into mine safety and investigate accidents. Importantly, the Bureau is given no regulatory authority and no power to enforce safety standards. It can study and recommend, but not compel. This limitation is not accidental. It reflects the political power of the coal industry and the prevailing belief that government should not interfere with business operations. The Bureau of Mines establishes research programs into ventilation, dust suppression, and explosion prevention. It develops the rock dusting technique, spreading pulverized limestone in mines to prevent coal dust explosions. It promotes the adoption of electric cap lamps to replace open-flame carbide lamps. It trains mine rescue teams. These efforts save lives, but slowly. The coal industry adopts safety improvements only when forced to by state laws or by public pressure following additional disasters. Real reform comes piecemeal over decades. West Virginia enacts stronger mine safety laws in 1912 on requiring better ventilation and more frequent inspections. Pennsylvania follows in 1913. Other states adopt similar measures. The Federal Coal Mine Safety Act of 1952 establishes the first federal safety standards, though enforcement remains weak. The Federal Coal Mine Health and Safety Act of 1969, passed after another wave of disasters, finally gives federal inspectors the authority to close dangerous mines and levy substantial fines for safety violations. From Monongah in 1907 to the 1969 Act, 62 years elapse. In those years, tens of thousands of additional miners die in preventable accidents. The reforms that could have been implemented immediately after Monongah instead arrive gradually, each new law written in miners' blood. Today, the Monongah mine site is quiet. The entrances are sealed, the tipple is long demolished. And nature has reclaimed much of the hillside that once echoed with the sound of mine cars and machinery. But memorials remain. A granite monument stands near the disaster site, bearing the names of the dead and a simple inscription: "In memory of the men who lost their lives in the Monongah mine disaster, December 6, 1907. Every December, a small ceremony is held. Descendants of the victims attend. Local historians speak about the disaster and its impact. The names are read aloud: Marino, Palumbo, Kowalski, Novak, O'Brien, names from a dozen countries united in death beneath a West Virginia mountain. The disaster's legacy extends beyond memorials. Monongah becomes a rallying cry for the labor movement and for mine safety reform. It demonstrates that industrial capitalism without regulation and without worker power produces catastrophe. It shows that profit motive alone cannot ensure worker safety, that companies will accept catastrophic risk rather than reduce profit margins. It proves that workers need legal protections, strong unions, and government enforcement of safety standards. The reforms that follow Monongah, slow and incomplete as they are, save countless lives. Modern American coal mines, while still dangerous, are dramatically safer than their 1907 counterparts. Fatal injury rates have declined by more than 95%. Explosions, once common, are now rare. These improvements did not occur because companies suddenly developed consciences. They occurred because law required them, because unions demanded them, and because public pressure, generated by disasters like Monongah, forced change. The 362 men who died at Monongah did not die for progress. They died for profit. They died because the Fairmont Coal Company chose not to spend money on safety measures that might have saved them. But their deaths, and the outrage those deaths generated, contributed to reforms that protected later generations of miners. That is not justice, but it is something. It is a reminder that industrial progress built on worker corpses demands accounting. It is a memorial not just to the dead, but to the necessity of protecting the living. If this documentary helped you understand the human cost behind America's industrial development, please consider subscribing and sharing this video. These stories need to be remembered. The men who died in these disasters deserve more than silence. They deserve witnesses,